Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Um, so Wednesday morning, here we go. And we are looking at the end of our unit here. Um, Chapter 8 will close out today, um, and then move into looking at more hominids. This is going to be a chapter of hominids, transitioning out of the non-human apes and moving towards a um, ourselves. We're always moving towards ourselves in some way. Um, so today I'm going to the exam will be open and it'll be open through Saturday till the end of Saturday. So um, just keep that on your radar. Obviously, hopefully, you got plans to carve out a window to take that thing. Also, do at the end of today is your assignment number 2, the primate paper. I will get grading on those things as fast as possible. Got lots of grading to do. I just seem to organize all my classes to have all the assignments due at the same time typically. Um, so in the next week or so, I hope to get that going and back to you. So. Um, Are there any questions about where we stand and where we're going? All right, silence is golden. That means everybody is completely on top of my class, at least. Maybe not, maybe not other classes, but hopefully everybody is squared away with what we're expected of each other. Um, so what we have been talking about up to this point in the last class. Um, has been looking at the mosaic of quality of the evolutionary traits that have the morphological traits that have evolved um, from this Miocene generalized hominoid that we look at the very bottom at 20 million years ago. Now, I've mentioned this before in the past, and I think it definitely needs to be mentioned again, that when you look at the fossil record, what we have found the most of and what we have focused the most on is ourselves and early hominid and hominids. Um, but what we have not really developed a strong foundation for is these generalized hominoids that we're seeing represented down here. Um, so at some point around 7 million years ago, the theory is that the story goes that we broke off from these hominoids and went off into the hominin lineage, as we're going to see today. Um, but the those hominoids continue to evolve, and so what we see in chimps and bonobos and the other great apes, non-human great apes, um, are not equivalency to the creatures that lived 7, 8, 10, 15, 20 million years ago. We don't have um, a strong representation of those guys. Um, but however, so what's happened, what we see with the chimp and what we see with the bonobo today, they are definitely ancestral to these early generalized hominoids. Um, but they have, they aren't exactly what was living 7 million years ago. Obviously, just like we aren't exactly what was living with the hominin lineage from 7 million years ago. So each lineage has been evolving over time. Um, so what we're looking at, what we're tracking here, are 3 different elements: locomotion, the brain, and our mouth, our teeth, the dentition. And as we saw, the first thing that was established in that evolutionary pathway for us, for hominins, is this bipedalism, the locomotion part. Um, and then secondly was this brain um, development that became um, larger and more encephalized, which means that cephalization, we talked about that, that it's proportion, the body to the brain, the proportion became larger brain, smaller bodied, proportionally. Dentition, more derived teeth with smaller incisors, the loss of um, the gap for the shearing apparatus for our canines, to the diastema to drop down. Um, so yes, this is kind of what we're tracking here, and leading to our belief that all of this led to us being able to make tools, and the tools will become obviously very important for us to track eventually. But right now we're not there yet. We're not at the tool maker. We're not at Homo. Homo is where we start to see the tools. But first we got to travel through a um, pre-Homo phase of pre-Australopithecines, um, and very much have fragments of skeletons. We're not talking about whole skeletons. In fact, every time there's a major find, we're not finding a full skeleton. We're finding partial remains of the skeleton. Um, Most noteworthy, look at where these findings are located. Um, they're in that eastern Africa, Olduvai Gorge, um, this Rift Valley area that we talked about on Monday. This Rift Valley area is just the volcanic zone of just the gold mine for finding a fossil, which we've looked at how fossils are created and why this is such a rich bed for creating them. The earth is splitting apart, for one thing, allowing for the natural excavation through the water, through the rains, and dumping down into the riverbed that exists there. Um, Naturally opening up for anthropologists to go in and just, hey, there's a fossil on the side of they don't even really have to dig that far. It's there for them to see because nature is unveiling itself. Um, and also embedded in this world of volcanoes. And volcanic ash is very important, remember, for for being able to calculate the age. So, yes, another important point to be made about these pre-Australopithecines, the location. Although not all are on east, there's one that's Sahelanthropus is in the central of Africa, as you see. But however, what makes them all what they all have in common is that where they lived, um, where they were found, that is, were in trees, underneath trees or near trees. So not in the savannah, meaning that they were most likely living partially on the trees and partially out of the trees, which is one of the theories about how we became bipedal, is that we started to walk in balance in the trees bipedally by holding on to branches above us. And so we talked about different theories about how bipedalism evolved, and most of them are associated with arboreal lifestyle, living amongst the trees. So these pre-Australopithecines were definitely coming out of the trees, I guess you could say, because they were found around the trees. We're going to also look at Australopiths, which we'll talk about in early Homo in this sequence. So the time range is hard to grapple with because it's such a mass number of years. But the first pre-Australopithecine, it's not the first that was found, but the oldest that was found is Sahelanthropus at 7 million years ago. Auroran is at 6 million years ago. And these are all, of course, just buried, give or take, hundreds of thousands of years. But somewhere around 6.5, I've actually heard Sahelanthropus as being somewhere around 6 to 7 million years ago. So we're talking about give or take a million years there almost. But that's vast deep time that we're talking about. Um, and Auroran um, is a was a massive finding, is what we'll talk about, at 6 million years ago. Ardipithecus, another really large a large landmark finding as well. When I say Auroran is a massive finding, it was small in representation as far as one individual, but it was massive in what it established. Ardipithecus, and then Ardipithecus framidus, which are these names are important. They indicate, like, for example, Auroran, the name itself is typically has significant meaning to the local folklore. It's often identified as being, like in Sahelanthropus chadensis, Chad, Central Africa. Chad is the root of the species name. So they are significant to local folklore and local. Um, they were found in where people live, and so therefore, obviously, there's going to be a story that they are going to have about this elderly um, ancestor that they're living amongst. So Sahelanthropus chadensis. So the dating method was in faunal correlation, biostratigraphy, which we've talked about, and literally it was mapped with other animals and life forms that were found about 100, I'm sorry, 1,500 miles away. So, but the stratigraphy remains consistent, and so that is not the ideal way to identify the age of a fossil, but there is some accuracy in science behind that. Um, it was a very small brain case, very small, 320 to 380. This is chimpish size. The face, however, was vertical. The brow ridge is robust, which means brow meaning connection to, when you have these robust sort of elements to a skeleton, um, whether it be the brow ridge or the sagittal crest, the mohawk. It's indicative of connection to to chew for eating, and for, you know, the also the holding up the neck, but it's for muscle attachment. And yes, I think Samantha had asked, and I didn't respond to it in the chat the other day, that it's for eating. Yes, it's to give the power of the punch of the bite. Um, and so, yes, the interesting thing about Sahelanthropus, and what really made the two things that really made anthropologists think this is a hominin, is that there is the absence of the canine and the diastema, that honing complex we mentioned, but also the foramen magnum, which is the hole that connects the skull to the spine. Um, that hole was not necessarily in the back, and it wasn't necessarily vertically underneath the skeleton. So therefore, it was intermediate, somewhere in between, indicating that, and that's a major signature for being able to walk upright, to develop the balance to walk upright. Um, Interesting about Sahelanthropus is that there are no postcranial findings here. There's no lower body, just the skeleton. So that leaves open that, you know, a question: is this a hominin, or is this homoplasy? Homoplasy meaning that we're talking about possibly these traits developed, um, could have developed independently in both the hominins and the hominoids, and not necessarily indicative of being ancestral to us, but possibly just an anomaly. But anyway, there's speculation that this is a strong speculation that this is a hominin. Any questions? Or
I had,
Warren?
sorry,
Yes.
I had one.
Yes.
You said he didn't have canines, correct?
Right, right. There was no exaggerated canine. Um, so the shearing complex, the honing complex that sharp, the diastema that creates the holes for the dropping of the canines. I mean, it's rough, but there is actually representation there in that skeleton of the actual dentition. So yeah, that's pretty significant that the teeth had been derived to eat, and not necessarily to have those exaggerated canines.
Okay, thank you. That was all I needed.
Yeah, Auroran chigensis is I have a great documentary that we're not going to have time to watch. I've got some shorter clips instead, but there's a great documentary it's pretty day. It's probably maybe 15 um, plus years old, but it does the detective work of how they put together these, what is it, 13 or 14 pieces of the fossil record, um, of this is extraordinary scientific work that they put through a process of determining that this is a definite hominin. There is teeth represented there, and those teeth are definitely similar to humans. The back teeth are not necessarily robust like you find with the hominoids, but you find with humans, meaning that they're not, their food is their back teeth aren't chomping down like a gorilla would on a stalk of bamboo. But they definitely are on the front teeth more like apes, meaning that the honing complex and the canines seem to be more like apes. Um, and make note that they use potassium argon to date these bones, so we have more definitive understanding that this is a 6 million year old fossil. Um, the lower limbs are indicate, and that's what really is most interesting is how they use what they have in the femurs to determine um, with the technology that they have and the computer technology they have to determine that this was a bipedal creature, and the shape of the femurs and indicate that the angle of the femur, um, like ours, is angled in and not straight down. So very much well human. However, the fingers, which they have some finger representation, um, indicate that the hands were very curved. So again, very much well a hybrid of hominin traits and hominoid traits. This creature, the Auroran tugensis, actually is thought to be more similar to humans than Lucy, which is an Australopithecine, we're going to talk about in a minute, more similar to humans. And so this being an older creature than than Australopithecines, because we're talking about Australopithecines are about 3.5 million years ago. Somehow or another, it indicates that there's some sort of yo-yo effect, that somehow Auroran is closer to us but older, and so there's some sort of bouncing like a yo-yo up and down the fossil record. Um, yeah, there's definitely the fossil record is not it's not full, to say the least. The story continues. Every new find tells a different segment of the story, and so there's lots of gaps. In other words, Ardipithecus was a so there's when we talk about Ardipithecus, the one major find is was worked on by a guy named Tim White from Berkeley University in California, and they started working on this guy in about, I think, 1981, and finished up and still located, still working there actually, but finished up and came out with their major finding in Scientific America in I think it's 2010 or somewhere in that neighborhood. So we're talking about decades of work. 60 um, different individuals, 50 different individuals were found. 50 different actually specimens of hominins were found. Lots of teeth, lots of upper arm bones, lots of fragmentary remains. They walked into a gold mine here. It wasn't just well, there was a lot of looking to get here, but just we're talking about thousands of specimens of animals of different sorts, but 50 different individual hominins, fragments of hominins. Tons of artifacts. This is just, like I said, really a gold mine, and they spent decades unveiling it, and kept it under wraps for quite a while. But then it was a big unveiling. So Ardipithecus, nicknamed Artie, the teeth are definitely primitive. That is ancestral and indicating kind of a hominoid-like presentation. The limbs are derived. They're not knuckle walking. They are flexible arms, and definitely indicating upper arms being indicating more like us actually. And the pelvis also broader, shorter. We talked about the bowl effect for our pelvis versus the more vertical pelvis of the hominoids. The definitely built for bipedalism. Um, Big toe is divergent, interesting enough. The big toe is divergent. So that is something that definitely doesn't, and again, it's a mosaic of traits here, and it's not a perfect package of, oh, this is perfectly a homo. This is not, these are traits that are moving towards homo, but not definitely, it's not a perfect picture yet for walking upright. So most likely, again, found in a woodland environment, meaning that they were living in the woods and probably up in the trees part of the time. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is those artifacts that were found was that in that cave called Cima de los Huesos?
No,
Or is that
no.
a different location?
Yeah, this is not cave. This is out in the open. This is, oh, I'm sorry. This is out in the woodland open. It's in the
Oh,
woods.
okay.
No caves going on here. So all the artifacts that are found in caves, we're talking about Neanderthals and modern Homo, but that's much later. Much later. We're not.
Oh,
We're
so
definitely.
this is first, and then the other stuff.
Yeah,
It's like it comes
yeah.
after. Okay.
Yeah. So we are early on. When we get up into talking about Neanderthals, and we're talking about maybe a couple 100,000 years ago, then we're getting into Neanderthal land, but also Homo erectus and Homo habilis. We're not even talking about Homo yet. We're talking about pre-Homo. Um, we're gonna in the next unit we'll get into the Homo, the genus Homo, and get closer to us. So
I see.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah,
So the Ardipithecus still had a thumb-like digit on its foot. Is kind of what I'm seeing down here.
yeah, exactly. So we're talking
Okay.
about um, the pelvis having indicating that we have a bipedal creature, and the femur as well. The upper limbs indicating um, definitely kind of more derived towards not necessarily swinging through trees, less curvature, definitely not built for knuckle walking like we find with the other grape apes. But what is kind of this sort of outlier is the divergent big toe, which we talked about is indicative of in the trees and with our hominoid cousins. So yeah, again, a mosaic of features here that indicate both a mixture of vertical walking and potentially quadrupedal as well. So, or up in the trees at least.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Hmm. So this is Ardipithecus ramidus. Now the name Ardipithecus Ardi, A-R-D-I, is Afari for ground, local language representing ground. Ramid, R-A-M-I-D, is equals in Afari root. So the root of humanity is what this is. The like I said, every name has importance typically to local folklore. So Australopithecus. Australopithecus is the colloquial term that we use as an umbrella term to also refer to Paranthropus and Australopithecus. Um, so these are two closely related genus, um, two closely related, in fact, often thought to be the same lineage, but most agree that they are not. But they are so close. Excuse me. They live so closely in time, and their features, their physicality, their morphology is very much, well, very similar to say the least. Um, you find these creatures like all prehistoric, pre-Homo, that is Australopithecines, Paranthropus, Sahelanthropus, Ardipithecus, Auroran. All those creatures lived in Africa. We don't find any of them out of Africa. So you're going to have the task of doing an exercise for the last unit of doing kind of a identifying chart for each of these, and it's very much well just going through and finding where they lived, and it's just some detective work a little bit, but it's all, most of it can be found in your textbook actually, but a little bit of research, but so all of these creatures lived in Africa, Central and East and South Africa. They are the Australopithecus that have, we're talking about 4.2 to 1.2 million years ago. They have lived a lot longer than we have. They definitely died out, or they evolved into Homo. But as far as success goes, hey, they've got us beat so far, and we haven't. We're talking about we've survived 100,000 years. And these creatures lived for 3 million years. So really, probably don't need to rush to judge Australopithecus. Hopefully we can survive that long as well. So we are, like I said, the most successful genus and species of the, and at least that we know of in the fossil record. So all Australopithecines are, you could say, we're going to look at individuals as well, but when we generalize about them, they all are small-brained, sort of chimp-like sized brain, big tooth, but definitely bipeds, definitely walking upright. But however, again, they are a mosaic of traits that indicate that they were changing, and they were becoming more prone towards walking vertically, but they were not necessarily obligated like we are. So this is definitely, again, all the small brains, we're talking about is comparable to early Homo, but because early Homo is around 450 to 500 cc's as well, cubic centimeters, and chimps are not much smaller, 350 or so, so kind of in the same domain as far as brain size. But like I said, big teeth, pretty large molars, and there is some canine representation with that shearing complex of the diastema. So this was a major find for the as insignificant as it appears from this image. It's like just a kind of a hole in the rock a little bit, or an indentation. If you were just walking by, you probably wouldn't make anything of it. But what was found in the 1960s by Mary Leakey. Mary Leakey, the name Leakey is just a you could say famous 3 generations of anthropologists of looking for fossils in Africa. So they're known. There's a lot of politics in anthropology that is very known to anthropologists, but not to the rest of the world. A lot of competition about who can get the next big find, and which find is what, and the debate about who has the earliest find. It's so the Leakeys. Really, their name is just, they are like the Michael Jordans of basketball, of anthropologists. So this, what they found here, what Mary found, was thousands of footprints. 20 different animals were represented with these footprints. And what happened was, so these creatures were walking through mud right before a volcanic eruption. And very much the volcanic eruption basically, created a fossil record of the of all these footsteps. And so 20 different kinds of animals. However, of those animals, of course, we found hominids. And so there was a trail of about 75 feet of 2 or 3 individuals walking next to each other. And in their walking, obviously, you see the imprint of a bipedal creature, because that toe, that there's a small little arrow there representing, that toe was not divergent. It was closer in these footsteps. And 2 individuals walking next to each other. You can almost imagine them walking hand in hand, indicating that there was like a child, because the size of the footprints indicate there's like a child and possibly a parent, or maybe 2 parents. So yeah, this captured the imagination, to say the least, of the world of anthropology, early 1960s. We'll come back to the Leakeys when we talk about early Homo, but yes. So this dental, feet and teeth, exciting world of anthropology. But we gotta take a little bit of a closer look when we talk about teeth. Australopithecines, like I mentioned, are big-toothed bipeds, and as you see, the diastema in Africanus, the diastema is not there. In Afarensis, it is there. So there is some variability in the fossil record when it comes to teeth. Paranthropus, as you see, the teeth are much more robust. Robustus is indicating it is what it is. It says it is. It's a larger creature than Australopithecines, more robust, and that is definitely, humans are more slender creatures. So as we see that the body size becomes smaller, and the robustness sort of become minimized, we're starting getting closer to modern humans. So yeah, this is a nice breakdown if you look at it from these 4 different or 5 different representations. However, I love these next 2 slides, because it really kind of brings it down to what we're talking about when we talk about the dentition. What do you see different in the human dentition versus the ape dentition? What's
I
going
don't know
on
the
there?
name of those teeth. What I don't know. I forgot the name of the teeth that on the ape. Forgot the name, but
Yeah,
it's almost like it went from looking like I can't remember the name, but it's
the
those
the canine,
canines.
the canines.
Yes,
Okay, so that's one
but
thing
not
that.
so wide and big, I guess.
Right, right. So that's definitely something that stands out, right? The canines, and the diastema, the space, and our molars. Yeah, Gabby. Well, we don't have our. Well, we have the same dentition, but the size of the molars and premolars are much smaller. What about the shape? What's going on? This is called a dental arcade. The arcade is the shape, is the um, what's happening with the shape.
It's slowly kind of widened out to a degree.
Yeah, so for humans, it's divergent at the back, right? The molars start to diverge. For apes, they are parallel. So that's something that is really something that is shown out throughout the fossil record. That as we get to modern humans, we get more divergence. And with apes and Australopithecines, because this is Australopithecine, it's converging in the back. So diverging modern humans, converging pre-modern humans. So definitely, this is one of those things that you see as a indicator of evolution. Lucy. Um, so the other giant name in anthropology is Donald Johanson. Um, he is he's renowned for his discovery of Lucy. This is Australopithecus afarensis, um, and it is the most prevalent form of Australopithecine that you find in the fossil record. There are several hundred afarensis specimens representing 60 different individuals in the area of Lake Tole and Hadar, which is that eastern Africa area. 60, 60 individuals alone just for this one species. Um, Afarensis is actually more ancestral than any of the later occurring species, um, making them a little bit more ape-like. So they're half ape, half human, in other words. And Lucy is definitely a partial skeleton, but 40% is represented in of the entire specimen. That's significant. That is significant. Um, Definitely thought to be an evolutionary bridge. That sort of thought to be a bridge towards modern Homo. That is a direct link from here to modern Homo. On the postcranial side of things, that being the low the everything below the cranial, postcranial, um, is definitely indicating bipedalism, but definitely some traits that indicate also living in the trees. This is a story that is a kind of a repetitive thing when we talk about pre-Homo, but the limbs waist down is bipedal, the femur, in other words, um, but the arms, however, are curved. So definitely representing somebody that lived in the trees. And postcranial, the teeth are definitely primitive, parallel rows. In other words, converging in the back, like we just saw. Robust nuchal crest, which when we talk about that bone, the bone on the back of the head, that nuchal crest is something that is indicative of bone muscle attachment. Brain case is small, 420 cubic centimeters. Again, in the range almost close to chimps, which is about 350. Forma magnum, important, is towards the back, but not necessarily like a hominoid. where it's completely in the back, but sort of in between the rear and underneath, so sort of the middle ground. So this is a female, and this female stood at about 3.5 feet. Male stand at about 5 feet. So this is, pretty. When we talk about sexual dimorphism, there's pretty strong sexual dimorphism in Afarensis, which is closer to the hominoids and not necessarily Homo. Homo, we see less sexual dimorphism. Australopithecus africanus is so the first Australopithecine found was actually found by this guy, Raymond Dart, 1924. Donald Johanson, he actually came about and found Lucy in 1974. So this was the first hominin that was found in Africa. Before this finding, it was thought that Homo and our lineage was evolved in actually Asia. So this was major controversial finding and debated as to whether or not this was actually a hominin or not. And definitely, again, you have traits that are indicative of both living in the trees and having the brain size that's larger than a bonobo, larger than a chimp, but that definitely body weight and proportion of body to brain is similar to a gorilla. But the forma magnum is what is really very strong here. The forma magnum is indicating definite bipedalism. That hole that connects the skull to the postcranial. So again, we're not going to get into the politics too deep. We're not going to get into any of these finds too deeply. We're just getting a general overview of what we're talking about here. The more derived Australopithecines, what we call Paranthropus, came about at about 2.5 to 1.2 million years ago. But we found living parallel to each other. Remember, these creatures do not move very far from their home range. So they don't necessarily, it's not thought that they overlap with each other in their terrain and where they're living. But these creatures, Paranthropus, Australopithecines, and Homo, were thought to be living parallel at the same time for about 1 million years, actually. But all three of these creatures were at one point coexisting. So Paranthropus, when you think of Paranthropus, think of a more robust creature. That is just the signature for Paranthropus, and why we don't. Morphologically similar to the Australopithecine, but size-wise different, and that is that's what makes this stand out the most. Is that it actually sort of throws a wrench in what is actually how to place this creature in the story that we tell. So Paranthropus, again, you got the sagittal crest that is indicative of bone attachment. What's interesting is this area right here, this post-orbital constriction area that's from the superior view is constricted. So this is a kind of a pea brain, I guess you could describe it. But also most noteworthy is the zygomatic arch. The zygomatic arch that branches out here, that is very much I'm talking about the far left-hand corner image, indicating bone and muscle attachment. Also, the cheekbones, that is the zygomatic arch, but the front view of the cheekbones here were wide, a very wide cheekbone. What else? Noteworthy is the teeth, the dental array here, dental arcade. Very large teeth, especially in the molars, and that's really one of the signatures is looking for these very robust molars for the Paranthropus. But molar teeth indicating that they're chomping down on a lot of vegetation. So kind of gorilla style. So this is nicknamed the Black Skull, Paranthropus ethiopicus, and this was found in East Africa, like most all these findings were. Again, a mosaic of features. It developed this black um, tone because of the mineralization process. What happens with fossils? How do fossils get created? Well, the organic life is replaced by minerals, and the minerals that replaced the organic matter was just this toned, sort of black toned minerals. So it created this sort of black, sort of it's kind of it stands out in the fossil record because of its color, but it's still, the shape is definitely a Paranthropus. Look at the zygomatic arches. Look at the mohawk, the sagittal crest, and enormous molars. Very projecting face. As we get closer to modern Homo, the face is more vertical. Again, we're still the same range as far as bodies for brain wise, as far as size wise, at 410 cubic centimeters. So Paranthropus was, hey, not that unsuccessful at all. 1.5 million years long. Thought to be what we describe as a megadont. I love these terms. Sounds like a yeah. It definitely is. It's kind of dramatic to say the least. Huge premolars and molars, canines, diastema absent. So again, the dentition is a mixture of traits. Megadont meaning that it's very much derived towards eating very specific vegetation, probably plants and whatnot. Canines are definitely absent, so we're moving towards modern humans in that sense, and less sexual dimorphism potentially as well because of that. But flatter face, and that verticality of the face was definitely a trait that is indicative of modern Homo. So we'll pick up here on Friday and start talking about the early Homo. Well, actually, This is where we sort of finish off with this entire unit. But modern Homo is, yeah. Let's pick up here. We're going to transition into talking about the next unit with this. This is the last hominin of the of chapter 8, and it is, as you see, was found by Louis Leakey. And what is most significant about this creature is that you have a cubic centimeter of 600 to 775 cubic centimeters. That is significantly more than Paranthropus or Australopithecines. We're talking about almost 200 cubic centimeters larger, a flatter face, and more vertical face. Thought to be the most significant finding of all. This was as far as at that time. This was in the early 1960s by Louis Leakey, Mary's husband. This was thought to be, this is the start of our hominin lineage. This is the transitional moment. And if you look at the track record here, you got Sahelanthropus, and this is the brain size. Sahelanthropus at 350. Ardipithecus, we're not for sure because we don't have necessarily, except for Forensis, thought to be 420. But there's a big jump from Australopithecines to to the genus Homo, from 410 to 500 to 631 with the genus Homo, with Homo habilis. So that is where we stand, and maybe we'll pick up a little bit here and on Friday, but your exam is open, and you can have at it. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll stand on for another minute or two. Um, and you'll have a good rest of your day. Be safe if you have to be out in this wet stuff. So,
Thank you.
Thanks for the class.
thank you.
Have a good one. Adios.
Bye bye.